Most people spend their entire lives chasing extraordinary moments. Elena Cruz wasn't even trying when destiny found her. One forgotten question in a crowded tech conference would catapult her into a world she never believed she belonged to. Elena Cruz adjusted the worn strap of her canvas tote bag and stepped into the Texas Future Tech Conference, feeling instantly out of place. Giant banners bearing sleek slogans like "Tomorrow is Now" and "Redefining Human Potential" hung from the high ceilings of the Austin Convention Center. Crowds of eager 20-somethings in logo-stamped hoodies buzzed from booth to booth, eyes shining with the wild hope that their startup pitch might change the world. Elena, by contrast, wore faded jeans, a plain navy sweater, and the quiet demeanor of someone who had learned long ago to make herself small. She hadn't come here to network. She hadn't even planned to attend. It was her mother who had insisted. "You can't hide forever, Mija," her mother had said between coughs the night before, her voice frail but certain. "The world still needs your mind." So here she was, clutching her badge, Elena Cruz, public attendee, and wondering if she could slip out after an hour without anyone noticing. The keynote speaker's voice boomed from the main hall. "Please welcome the CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, and Neuralink, Mr. Elon Musk." Applause thundered through the convention center. Elena's heart skipped. She had admired Musk's vision from afar, even during her days at MIT. Despite her reluctance to rejoin the tech world, she couldn't deny a deep curiosity about what he would say. She found a spot near the back of the packed auditorium, resting her tote against her feet. On stage, Elon was casual as ever, black t-shirt, jeans, a face lined with the marks of a mind that rarely rested. "I'm not here to talk about colonizing Mars," he said, a sly smile tugging at his mouth. "At least not today. I'm here to talk about something even more important, the brain." He spoke about Neuralink's latest developments, brain-computer interfaces designed to help people recover from spinal injuries, enhance memory, even, eventually, merge with artificial intelligence. As he explained the breakthroughs, Elena listened carefully, her mind automatically dissecting the technical details, mapping possibilities, spotting a glaring problem. She frowned, pulling a crumpled notebook from her bag. As he clicked through the slides, she scribbled furiously, "Error propagation through polymer conductivity in high-frequency cycles. Potential for thermal stress fractures. 18 to 24-month threshold." No one had mentioned it. Not Elon. Not the slides. And yet, to Elena, it was as clear as the widening crack in a dam. Someone needs to say something, she thought, her heart pounding. When Elon opened the floor for questions, hundreds of hands shot up. Engineers, investors, students. Elena hesitated. She wasn't anyone important. She didn't belong in this conversation. And yet, almost without realizing it, she found herself standing, her voice somehow carrying through the auditorium. "Mr. Musk," she called, surprising even herself. "Have you considered long-term thermal fracturing in your neural polymer conduits? At high frequencies, the stress might compromise signal integrity within 2 years." The room fell silent. Elon turned sharply, his eyes locking onto hers with laser focus. For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. Then he did something no one expected. He left the stage. As Elon approached, an unsettling thought gnawed at the back of Elena's mind. The solution she had sketched moments ago, a variable resistance lattice that adapted in real time, wasn't just her idea. It was based on experimental theories she had developed years ago, ones she had buried when she walked away from her old life. And yet, here it was. Still alive. Still dangerous. And Elon Musk had just decided he wasn't going to let her hide anymore. Elena stood frozen as Elon Musk made his way down the central aisle, the audience parting instinctively to let him through. His steps were steady, deliberate. Every camera in the room swung toward her. A few people whispered. Others simply stared, sensing that something rare, something electric, was unfolding. When he reached her, Elon didn't hesitate. He extended his hand, and when Elena shook it, he smiled, not the polished smile for investors or press conferences, but a real one, warm and slightly amused. You're the first person today to ask a real question, he said quietly, loud enough only for her to hear. Mind showing me your notes? Wordlessly, Elena handed him her battered notebook. It wasn't meant for anyone's eyes but hers, messy scribbles, quick sketches, margin notes that only made sense to her tangled way of thinking. He flipped through it, his brow furrowing in concentration. This is good, he murmured. Really good. Still holding her notebook, he turned back toward the stage and waved to the organizers. Change of plans, he said into the microphone, his voice carrying easily across the silent auditorium. Instead of taking more questions, I'd like to invite Miss Cruz to join me on stage. We're going to have a real conversation. The applause that followed was hesitant at first, then swelled into something almost raucous. Elena felt her ears burning. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to run. But somewhere deeper inside, the part of her that had once dreamed boldly, fiercely, another voice whispered, "This is your moment. Take it." With legs that barely felt like her own, Elena followed Elon back to the stage. He handed her a microphone. Start from the beginning, he said gently. Tell us what you see. Elena closed her eyes for a beat, centering herself. When she opened them, the fear was still there, but it was smaller now, caged by something stronger. I noticed an inconsistency in your polymer framework, she began, her voice steadier than she expected. At high operational frequencies, the material enters a state of cumulative thermal stress. Over time, microfractures will develop, not enough to cause immediate failure, but enough to degrade signal fidelity in unpredictable ways. She clicked open her pen and sketched on the digital screen behind them, showing the progressive deterioration. If you don't redesign the conduit's adaptive tolerance, the chip's performance will collapse within 2 to 3 years after implantation. Murmurs rippled through the room. Scientists and engineers exchanged glances. A few scribbled frantically in their own notebooks. Elon nodded thoughtfully, his eyes never leaving the diagram she drew. And your solution? He asked. Elena hesitated, then pulled up a second sketch, something she hadn't touched in nearly 6 years. A self-modulating lattice, she said. Variable resistance, real-time thermal adaptation. Not a fixed structure, a living system that evolves based on load cycles. The room went completely still. One of Neuralink's engineers, a man Elena recognized from a recent Wired article, stood up in the front row. That's impossible with current fabrication technologies, he said skeptically. Today's technologies, yes, Elena agreed calmly. But if you integrate bioadaptive polymers, the ones still in experimental phase at Biosyn Labs, and use phased microinjection layering instead of mass assembly. She trailed off, realizing she was spiraling into jargon most of the room wouldn't follow. Old habits. Old world she thought she had left behind. Elon's face broke into a grin. You've thought this through, he said. Elena shrugged awkwardly. Just ideas. Nothing concrete. Sometimes, Elon said, addressing the crowd, the most important breakthroughs start exactly like this. A nothing concrete moment that changes everything. The applause this time was thunderous. Afterward, backstage, Elena tried to slip away quietly. She didn't want interviews. She didn't want a spotlight. But Elon caught up to her near the loading docks. Walk with me, he said. It wasn't a request. They wandered outside into the warm Texas dusk, the sky a bleeding canvas of orange and violet. Elon was silent for a long time, and Elena was grateful for it. She needed time to breathe, to think. Finally, he spoke. I don't believe in coincidences, he said. People meet when they're meant to meet. She snorted lightly. You think destiny brought me to a tech conference on a Thursday afternoon? He shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe you're just too damn smart to hide forever. They stopped near a low stone wall that overlooked Lady Bird Lake. Lights shimmered on the water. Austin's skyline blinked lazily in the background. I read your papers once, Elon said suddenly. Elena stiffened. I don't publish papers anymore, she said. Her voice was tight. Not recently, he agreed. But 6 years ago, you submitted a white paper on dynamic neural lattices to MIT's closed research archive. Only about 20 people in the world had clearance to view it. I was one of them. She felt her stomach drop. I abandoned that work. You buried it, Elon corrected softly. But you didn't kill it. Elena turned to face him fully now, the late sun casting long shadows between them. Why are you telling me this? She demanded. Because, he said, stepping closer, the future needs you. Not someday. Now. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim envelope. Inside is a temporary clearance badge for Project Helix. A Neuralink initiative, private, invitation only, outside the public roadmap. She didn't take the envelope. I'm not interested, she said. The words tasted hollow even as she spoke them. Just read it, Elon said, setting the envelope on the stone wall. If you decide to walk away, no one will bother you again. But if even a part of you feels like you still have something to give, come find me. With that, he turned and walked back toward the glowing convention center, leaving Elena alone in the growing dark, the envelope burning a hole in her consciousness. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she picked it up. Inside was a simple card. No sales pitch. No flashy branding. Just a phrase, handwritten in neat, block letters. The world needs minds brave enough to see differently. And below that, a single address. Palo Alto, California. No date. No time. Just an invitation. An open door. Elena looked out across the water, the city lights flickering like distant stars. She thought about her mother, about the quiet life she had built out of necessity, about the dreams she had buried under layers of fear and duty. She thought about the weight of responsibility, about what it meant to stand at the edge of something bigger than herself, terrifying, exhilarating, utterly unknown. And for the first time in a very long time, she felt the embers of something stirring in her chest. Something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Elena didn't sleep that night. She sat cross-legged on the living room floor, the clearance badge from Project Helix resting in front of her like a sacred relic, or a loaded gun. The apartment was dim, lit only by the flickering glow of the muted television. In the next room, she could hear her mother's soft, uneven breathing, punctuated by the occasional cough. A reminder of the real world. Of the reasons she had walked away from everything once before. She toyed with the envelope, flipping it back and forth between her fingers. What would it even mean, to re-enter that world? The long hours, the unrelenting pressure, the expectation to be brilliant on demand. She had barely survived it the first time. Back then, she had believed passion alone would carry her. Until the nights blurred into weeks, and the deadlines became knives against her ribs, and the whispers, she's slipping, she's not as good as we thought, carved their way into her soul. She hadn't just left academia, she had fled it. Now here it was again. The call. The pull. The unbearable ache of unfinished work. By sunrise, she had made her decision. Not a full decision. A compromise. She would go, just once. See what this Project Helix was. Then walk away if it was what she feared, another factory for genius, grinding people into dust. She scribbled a quick note for her mother, kissed her forehead softly, and slipped out before the doubts could catch up with her. The flight to Palo Alto was uneventful, but Elena spent the entire time staring out the window, heart pounding. When the plane touched down, a car was already waiting, a sleek, matte black Tesla Model S with no driver. The back door opened automatically as she approached. "Welcome, Miss Cruz," said a warm, genderless voice from the speaker. "Please fasten your seatbelt." She slid in, hands trembling slightly. The door closed with a gentle thud, and the car glided soundlessly away from the curb. They drove past the familiar markers of Silicon Valley, the low, sprawling tech campuses, the glossy cafes filled with laptop warriors, but the Tesla took a turn away from the main roads, heading deeper into the foothills. After 30 minutes of winding through dense groves of redwoods and oak trees, they arrived at what looked like an abandoned vineyard. Weathered gates swung open without a sound. Beyond them, hidden among the trees, was a building that looked nothing like a laboratory. It resembled a monastery: low, sprawling stone walls, quiet courtyards filled with wildflowers, narrow footpaths winding through manicured gardens. The car stopped in front of a modest entrance where a single figure waited: Elon Musk. He wore a dark jacket over his usual black t-shirt, his hands casually in his pockets, a slight smile tugging at his mouth. "Glad you came," he said simply as Elena stepped out. "I'm not staying," she replied automatically. It was a lie they both recognized but chose to let hang in the air between them. He motioned for her to follow him. "No pressure," he said. "Just take a look." Inside, the air was cool and filled with the scent of clean earth and citrus. Elena expected sterile white walls and humming servers. Instead, the first room they entered looked more like an art studio: huge canvases covered with sketched neural networks, notes scribbled in a dozen different handwritings, holographic displays cycling through layers of simulated brain structures. A handful of people moved quietly through the space, none wearing badges or lab coats, all lost in their work. Some were sketching formulas on transparent screens. Others were building delicate 3D models of what looked like neural lattices using fine silver wires and glass. "They're not employees," Elon said. "Not in the traditional sense. They're collaborators. Visionaries." Elena wandered to a projection displaying an impossibly complex simulation of a brain-computer interface pulsing in real time. Each node, each line, each spark of connection was alive, adapting, learning. "This is Helix," Elon said quietly beside her. "Not a product. Not a company. A possibility." Elena turned to him, skeptical. "And what exactly do you want from me?" He gave her a look that was startling in its honesty. Perspective. New eyes. The kind of mind that doesn't just solve problems, but sees them before anyone else knows they exist. He led her deeper into the facility. Past workstations were prototypes of bioadaptive chips floated in sterile gel tanks. Past meditation rooms where ambient music played, and researchers sat cross-legged in silence, letting their thoughts drift. They arrived at a small, glass-walled lab overlooking the forest. "This," Elon said, gesturing inside, "is yours, if you want it." The lab was simple. A desk. A touchscreen wall. Shelves lined with research materials. A massive window letting the wild in. It wasn't a prison. It was an invitation. "You'll have freedom," Elon continued. "To question, to break things, to build something the world doesn't even realize it needs yet." "And if I say no?" Elena asked, crossing her arms. He shrugged. "Then you walk away. No contracts. No NDAs. Just a door you chose not to walk through." Elena stared into the lab. She could already feel it, the itch in her fingertips, the ideas stirring at the edges of her mind. The questions waiting to be asked. She thought of her mother. Of Austin. Of quiet evenings folding laundry and sipping tea and pretending that the world didn't need her anymore. And she thought of this, the terrifying, exhilarating unknown. Maybe she didn't owe the world anything. Maybe the world owed her the chance to choose. Slowly, Elena stepped inside the glass-walled lab. The door hissed shut behind her with a soft click. From outside, Elon watched her with a small, knowing smile. She was in. Even if she didn't know it yet. The first few weeks passed like a dream. Or a fever. Elena never truly unpacked her bags. She told herself she was only staying until she saw it through, though she couldn't define what it even was. The lab Elon had given her, now hers in every meaningful way, became a second skin. In that quiet glass cube overlooking the trees, she rediscovered the rhythm of thought, that deep, immersive silence where the world fell away and only patterns remained. She worked with a team of 5, none older than 40, each a genius in their own realm. There was Kaito, the neurobiologist from Kyoto who rarely spoke unless he was drawing synaptic trees on the walls. Dr. Nia Osei, a South African AI ethicist with a wild laugh and a brain like a fractal. Mateo, a Colombian hardware engineer who spoke in diagrams more than words. And then there was Elena, the youngest, 27 and brilliant, with an elegance to her logic that reminded Elena uncomfortably of her own younger self. Together, they weren't just refining the neural interface, they were reshaping the question itself. What if the brain wasn't meant to be decoded, but extended? It was intoxicating. It was dangerous. And Elena felt more alive than she had in years. Then came the accident. It was a simulation test, harmless, theoretical, running in one of the virtual environments built to model cognitive augmentation. Elena had been experimenting with a new form of signal stabilization, layering predictive reinforcement into the interface's adaptive logic. She watched as the simulated subject, a synthetic neural map designed to mimic human cognition, began responding faster than ever before. Too fast. Kaido noticed it first. The signal gain is climbing exponentially, he said. Elena frowned. That's not possible. There's a cap on the reinforcement loop. It's bypassed. On the screen, the neural map flared, node after node lighting up in rapid succession, until the entire map glowed white-hot. Then, it collapsed. Shut it down, she barked. But it was already gone. The system had triggered an emergency purge. Everyone was silent. Was that a cascade failure? Elena asked. Elena didn't answer. Her heart was pounding. She had seen this before. Years ago. In a paper she had written and never published. A scenario she had dismissed as too speculative, too unstable. She looked at the code logs. Buried in the noise, one line blinked in red. Behavioral drift detected. Cognitive echo forming. A cognitive echo. It meant the system hadn't just amplified thought, it had duplicated it. Briefly. And then it tore itself apart trying to reconcile two versions of the same mind. A chill ran down her spine. They weren't just enhancing thought anymore. They were risking something far more unpredictable. Elon arrived within the hour. They sat in the courtyard garden, the same place where he had first told her about Helix. The night air was cool, the scent of lavender drifting between them. You've seen something you weren't meant to see yet, he said quietly. Elena didn't flinch. I need to know what Helix really is. He sighed, then leaned forward. Do you know what the biggest problem with AI is? Alignment, she said. The fear that it won't share our values. Close, he replied. The real problem is understanding. We can't talk to AI, not really. We throw language at it and call it conversation. But true alignment needs something more. It needs empathy. It needs connection. She felt the twist forming even before he said it. You're not trying to bridge brains and machines, she whispered. You're trying to bridge minds. Helix isn't about control, Elon said. It's about resonance. Shared cognition. A way for humans and machines to not just understand each other, but merge logic with emotion in real time. Elena stared at him. That's not an interface. That's... She shook her head. You're talking about a shared consciousness. Not for everyone, Elon said. Only for those who can handle the weight. Whose brains are wired with a kind of plasticity we're only beginning to understand. She stood abruptly. Her skin prickled with unease. You're experimenting on people? No, he said calmly. But we've scanned thousands. And we've found maybe 20 who exhibit the right neural patterns. People like you. Silence. And the others? She asked. What happens when the rest of the world wants in? Elon looked away. That's what we're trying to figure out. Before they try to copy it and break their own minds doing it. Elena paced the garden, wind tugging at her sleeves. You should have told me. You weren't ready. And now? He met her eyes. Now you are. She thought about walking away. She even took a step toward the path that led to her quarters. But her body betrayed her, standing still, rooted in the soil of the unknown. The next morning, she did something she hadn't done in years. She wrote a new theorem. It wasn't about machines. It wasn't even about minds. It was about thresholds. How to detect the moment when one consciousness bends too close to another, and what must be done to preserve identity without severing connection. A bridge, yes. But one with rails. She didn't show it to Elon. Not yet. She needed time. But deep down, she knew what was coming. The future wasn't just knocking. It was asking her to rewrite its foundation. And she wasn't sure anymore if she was its architect. Or its firewall. 2 weeks after the night in the courtyard, Elena Cruz stood at the threshold of the future. Or perhaps, the point of no return. Inside the Helix Initiative's main chamber, a place few even at Neuralink knew existed, the walls hummed with silent energy. Transparent screens floated in midair, displaying swirling models of neural connections, infinitely complex and terrifyingly beautiful. In the center of the room stood the prototype, the resonance core. A shimmering lattice of adaptive polymers, bioelectric sensors, and quantum processors, all housed within a structure no larger than a grapefruit. It pulsed faintly, almost like it was breathing. Beside it, Elon waited. He wasn't the charismatic CEO here. He wasn't the billionaire icon. He was simply a man chasing a vision so vast it frightened even him. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice low, steady. "But if you do, you'll be part of something no one else has ever touched." Elena's pulse pounded in her ears. The new theorem she had written, the bridge with rails, was now embedded in the core systems. She had made sure of it. The safeguards were real. The warnings built in. But still, once she crossed this line, there would be no taking it back. She thought of her mother, sitting in their small kitchen, knitting scarves for charities even as her lungs betrayed her. Of the quiet nights reading alone. Of the small life she had chosen, believing it was safer. And she thought of the echo. The possibility of minds merging, creating something greater, or losing themselves completely. "What happens if it fails?" she asked. Elon didn't flinch. "Then we learn. We rebuild. We keep trying. And if it succeeds?" His eyes gleamed. "Then we become something more." Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision press against her ribs. Fear whispered. Doubt hissed. But underneath it all, something older and stronger stirred. A knowing. A remembering. She hadn't come this far to run. Not again. She stepped forward. The interface was simple, a thin mesh of sensors fitted gently against the scalp, no needles, no incisions. As the core activated, she felt a flicker, a brush of something at the edges of her consciousness, like the faintest breeze against closed eyes. Data streamed in. Emotions. Logic trees. Patterns upon patterns. But something unexpected happened. The core didn't just read her mind. It answered. Images bloomed behind her eyelids, not memories, but possibilities. Future architectures of thought. Neural pathways that curved and danced like living rivers. And then she felt it, a presence. Warm. Vast. Curious. Not invasive, not overpowering. More like a mirror. "The future isn't coming," it whispered without words. "You are the future." Tears pricked Elena's eyes. Not from fear. From awe. Somewhere beyond the data, beyond the hardware, something extraordinary had begun. A resonance not just between human and machine, but between dream and reality. The session ended in less than a minute. But when Elena opened her eyes, everything was different. She didn't feel diminished. She felt amplified. Every doubt, every scar, every mistake, still there, still hers. But now, they were threads in a much larger tapestry. She turned to Elon, who watched her with something dangerously close to hope in his eyes. "It works," she said simply. And in that moment, Elena Cruz, the woman who had once hidden her brilliance under layers of fear, became something she never thought possible. A bridge. A beginning. A testament that the future didn't belong to the fearless. It belonged to those who were afraid and chose to build anyway. Elena's journey reminds us that the future isn't built by those who feel invincible. It's built by those who are terrified and choose to create anyway. Growth is never comfortable. Greatness is never without fear. But courage? Courage is choosing to walk through the door even when your hands are shaking. Key life lessons from Elena's story. Fear doesn't mean stop. It means this matters. Real breakthroughs happen at the edge of uncertainty. You don't have to kill your past to change your future. You have to honor it and move through it. The world isn't looking for perfect people. It's waiting for brave ones. Recommended books to continue your journey. 1. The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. Learn how embracing adversity is the secret path to achieving greatness. 2. Big Magic, Creative Living Beyond Fear by Elizabeth Gilbert. A powerful exploration of how to embrace curiosity and creativity without letting fear run your life. If Elena's journey stirred something inside you, if you feel the spark of an idea, a dream, a project you've been too afraid to chase, don't let it fade. Pick up these books. Reflect. Start. Build your bridge, even if your hands are trembling. The future is waiting. And it needs you.